Hi guys, Anna here with some tips on what to pack for a plein air painting excursion, particularly if you plan on hiking or going a little further than just the view from your home or car. One of my greatest passions and joys as an artist is taking my paints out on long hikes with me. I especially love to explore the national parks. But even when I'm on a beach vacation or a weekend getaway, I bring my pack just in case. In this video, I'll talk about easels and supplies I recommend and offer some tips on traveling with your painting equipment. I'll also offer some advice on what to do if you forget something important, which I've done more times than I care to admit. Even if you don't intend to take your painting supplies very far, I still recommend that you watch this video to the end. Because if you're anything like me, you might intend to stay within 50 feet of your car, but then you see what might be an even better painting spot just a little further off, and then a little more beyond that, and before you know it, you've wandered half a mile and you're wondering why you're so tired. So let's start with the big topic everyone wants to know about first. I would say that this is the #1 question I get asked whenever I post a picture of me painting on location. What kind of easel is that? Well, my relationship with easels has evolved over the years as I've slowly come to figure out exactly what I need. Sometimes it seems like I've tried everything. My first easel was a French easel, one of the first things my husband ever gave me, I think while we were still dating. And I loved it, but it was big and clunky and heavy and not something I could ever dream of hauling on a 3-mile hike with me. I needed something a little bit smaller and more compact. My next easel was a Gorilla Box. I took that on several trips with me, including an epic one to Europe. And even though it was still rather clunky, I got pretty good at screwing it onto the tripod quickly and then throwing everything back into the box when my work was done. One time my husband and I even did a 10-mile summit hike with that box in my pack, and I never took it out because it was way too cold on that hike. My next easel was an Open Box M, which I purchased at the recommendation of a very well-known landscape painter. I liked how lightweight and adaptable it was for different size panels, but I never got very good at adjusting all the screws on it, and I wasn't a fan of the wooden mixing area. At some point I'll probably use it again, but when I do, I plan to paint the mixing area gray and then perhaps super glue a piece of glass on top of that. A glass palette, while it adds a bit of extra weight, it sure makes cleanup a lot easier. Then the Edge Pro paint book came out, and I really love this easel. I've used it for quite a few years now, and I still use it when I travel, especially when I'm painting a model from life, such as my weekly figure painting group. It's still a bit large for hiking with, though I've done it, but the amount of mixing space is generous for a pochade box, and it's nice and slim, so it fits well in a backpack. Some of the great features of the Edge Pro are that it has magnetic adjustable sliders for holding your panel and magnetic side trays that work great with the accompanying magnetic turp jar and for holding your brushes. It's great if you happen to bump your easel because it prevents your solvent from flying all over the place. Then Edge Pro came out with the Sketchbook, and it has all the same great qualities as the paint book, only it's about half the size, so it's perfect for long hikes. Both Edge Pro easels have optional LED lights that fit right in the top for painting at night or in low light settings, and I just love that feature. But the latest and lightest so far, and the one I most frequently grab when I know I'm going for a longer hike, is the Fly on the Wall easel by Prolific Painter. It was designed by Colorado artist Joshua Bain, who, like me, loves to combine painting and hiking, so you know it's going to be good. So what to wear? It really comes down to where you are planning to paint, the climate and the changing weather, and what makes you the most comfortable. The less distracted you can be by your clothing, the better. For example, I recommend wearing dark or neutral and non-reflective clothing. Bright white or neon, bright colors can reflect onto your painting and actually skew your perception of the colors and the values. Of course, I've painted in everything from gym clothes to swimwear to a little red dress and high heels, and I even wore a bathrobe once while painting out on our back deck. But when it comes to hiking, I recommend lots of layers because the weather in places like the desert or the Rockies can change dramatically within minutes. Calm down, that's the last one. All right, this is my plein air pack currently. It's just a backpack that I got from REI called the Trail 40. The 40 indicates the volume that this will contain. At one point I had one that was, I think, a 60-liter backpack, and that one kind of swallowed me whole. It was almost a little bit too big for me. But the great thing about this is that it has some great back support. It rests on the hips so that most of the weight of the pack is ending up on your hips, which is the way you want it. And it's got all of these great side pockets and features for stowing extra stuff. However, if the point is to keep it light, we want to make sure that we're only packing the essentials. So I'll show you what I have in here at the moment. Paper towel. Now this roll has been stripped down a little bit so that it's only about half the size of a brand new roll. So I try to make sure that I'm not bringing the whole thing because it has a hard time fitting in the pack, and I probably won't use up the whole roll on one painting. This is the easel attachment for the fly-on-the-wall easel, and I had it folded up so that it fit more compactly in the backpack, and it's got the quick release plate here on the back to attach to my tripod. I've got my tripod here. This is a Manfrotto Be-Free tripod. It's fairly lightweight. I could probably get one that's even lighter and I'd be a little bit happier. I would say that this is probably about 4 pounds altogether. Next, I've got my brush case. This one is called a Just Stow It, and I've probably overpacked it. This is the easel or the palette, I should say, for the fly on the wall. I still have some cling wrap on it and some paint from a previous painting session. You can get it so that there's extra mixing space on either side, whichever side you'd prefer. And then this section here is where it mounts to the tripod. It also has these little screws at the bottom that you can hang your turp jar from. Very handy. And as you can see, it folds up really, really small. This is probably only about 2 pounds. Here I've got what is actually a brush holder, but I've turned it into a paint carrier. And again, just like the brushes, I have way overpacked this. Way too many colors in here for a hiking trip. These are probably the entire array of colors I would choose to use, and depending on where I plan to go, I'll take out specific colors knowing I'm not going to use them, and I'll just limit it to maybe 6 to 8 colors altogether, because paint by far is one of the heaviest elements to bring along. However, it's also the most important. I don't always like limitations with my materials, but when it comes to packing light, if I have to narrow my paint selection down to just a few, these are the ones that I always grab. I've got from left to right burnt sienna, alizarin permanent, cadmium red light, cadmium orange, yellow ochre or yellow ochre pale, cadmium yellow light, titanium white, ultramarine blue, and phthalo green. And then I have a roll of cling wrap. I use that, as you saw on my palette, to just throw over the top of the wet paint so that it doesn't make a mess all over the place. I have trash bags for used paper towels. And then, you know, I almost never forget to bring my painting panels, but it has happened before, and unfortunately there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So as a fail-safe, there's this little laptop carrier section of my backpack, and I put an emergency panel in there, and I have it in there at all times just in case I happen to forget to bring this, which is a Raymar wet panel carrier. This one's an 8x10 size, and it's probably the main size I bring with me for hiking. Once in a while, if I want to go a little larger, I'll bring the 9x12, but that just barely fits in here, and so I have to be a little bit more strategic about how I pack everything. Opening it up, you can see it's got these cool little slots that separate the wet paintings from each other, and I can fit anything from an 8x8 or a 6x8 to an 8x10 in here, and so I have a variety of sizes. I can decide to bring 1 panel or up to maybe 6 if I want to. I have an extra pair of wool socks. Boots are incredibly important for hiking. Make sure you get ones that you can break in and that won't give you blisters. I've had these for probably 10 years now, and they're great. And then of course, my turp jar. This one has a little magnet at the bottom, which works great for the Edge Pro paint book or sketchbook, which are all magnetic. And but you don't need that. The little handle here can hang from the screw of your easel, or you can just set it down. But as you can see, I have the smaller size here, and there's already some Gamsol in there. When I fly with my painting supplies, of course, I can't bring it with the Gamsol. It has to be empty. And usually I wrap it up in a plastic bag to make sure that if it has any residual paint gunk in there, it won't get all over my suitcase. But what I like to do when I'm traveling and I know that I'm going to need to buy some solvent is I plan ahead. I look at where my plane is landing and look for the nearest arts or crafts supply store, and that's usually my first stop. I go and pick up some one of the smaller containers of solvent. And then I also make a grocery run because I have to have my snacks. Healthy snacks you might consider. You know, I really think it's important to go with something that's nutrient dense, that is calorie dense, because if you're planning to do a longer hike or exert a lot of energy while you're out there plein air painting, you want to make sure that you have the energy for that. So I bring things like nuts, fruit, beef jerky, almond butter with apples already cut up in little snack baggies, that kind of thing. Those are just a few of my favorites. And of course, good old-fashioned peanut butter and jelly. Probably the most important thing you can do for yourself while you're out plein air painting is making sure that you stay hydrated. So I always have a full bottle of water. This one is orange because it has some kind of vitamin powder that I poured in there, and I like to have a little bit of flavor in my water. And then another item that's helpful to have if you have room for it in your kit is a first aid kit. And even if you don't have room for the whole thing, bring some Band-Aids, bring some little tiny medical scissors, a couple things that, you know, might come in handy. You just never know. Another optional piece of equipment that I like to bring is a mini tripod with bendable legs. And this one is for my cell phone. And I can use that to take photos of my paintings or take videos. I really like to document my process, and so having one of these along is great. This is super lightweight, so it takes up hardly any space or weight in my pack. I also have a buff. I wear this around my neck for sun protection, and also to just be considerate of other hikers as they go by. I just pull it over my nose. Sunscreen. This, for me, as you can imagine, is quite crucial. So I always have sunscreen either in my car. Once in a while I'll bring it in my backpack as well, but I'll get the little travel size for that. I make sure that I use SPF 30 or higher, but like I said, that's just me, as you can see. In colder weather, I like to have a set of little warm fuzzy gloves in my pack. They don't take up much space at all either. In the side pockets here, you can see I have some wet wipes, some tissues. It's often very windy out there and my nose will run, and that just bugs me, so I have those along just in case. And then I have hand sanitizer, chapstick, and some business cards. You just never know when somebody's going to come along and see the amazing painting that you're doing out there and ask if they can buy it. Last but not least, we talked about wardrobe a little bit, but I think having a hat is absolutely essential. Once in a very rare while, I'll wear sunglasses while I'm painting, but only if there's so much glare that I can't stand it, because sunglasses will actually alter the colors and the values that you're seeing. So if you want to be absolutely true to what you're seeing out on location, it's best to skip the sunglasses and just wear a hat. Wide-brimmed is obviously the most effective. It also helps protect you from the sun. I've used fedoras, sun hats, that kind of thing. This is my usual. It's just a regular old trucker hat. I love it. And then this one is kind of cool because it has a little light inside of it. There's a little button right here on the side, and it's called a power cap. And this is great if you plan to do any night painting, or if you're at, you know, sunset or sunrise and your light is minimal. It's great for lighting your easel and your palette. and it serves as a regular hat otherwise, so dual purpose. So what should I do if I forget something important? What if I forget my solvent? Or what if I forget my paper towels? Well, I have forgotten solvent before, and generally what I'll do is I'll keep wiping my brushes with my paper towels. I'll make sure that I'm keeping my mixtures clean that way, and then I wrap them up in saran wrap or a trash bag and clean my brushes when I get back. Solvent isn't actually that necessary to have with you. In fact, it's just one more thing. But for many of us, we like to clean our brushes as we go. We like to thin our paints as we go, so it is always helpful to have. But like I said, not necessary, so it's not a deal breaker. What happens if you forget your palette? Yes, I have done that. I forgot my palette one time. I had brought the other part of this fly-on-the-wall easel, the part that attaches to the tripod and holds my panel. So I had remembered that part, but forgot this one. And this was for a whole weekend trip that I took. And I was like, oh no, I was planning to paint this whole time. So without my palette, I was kind of at a loss. But what I ended up doing was I took some panels that were just a little bigger than I planned to work on, and I put my paints on the sides of my panel and laid them out like a palette, and it worked fine. I was able to mix the paint on the painting as I worked, and it ended up looking pretty cool in the end. So it wasn't the end of the world. It was just one more solution that I could come up with in order to continue painting, and my trip was not ruined. I have very often forgotten trash bags, so my pack is definitely not in pristine condition anymore. It's a painting pack. So if I forget trash bags, I'll just throw my dirty paper towels in one of the side pockets. You don't want them blowing away. You definitely want to leave the place that you are set up the way you found it, or even better than the way you found it, especially if you're going to the national parks. So it's very, very important that we do our best to clean up after ourselves. And that being said, if I forget a trash bag, I'll just put my dirty towels in my backpack and maybe even wrap them inside of a clean paper towel so that the paint isn't getting on anything else. So some tips on keeping your pack minimal. Bring only the things that you really need. They say this about packing for a trip in a suitcase as well. You need your easel, your tripod, you need your paints, your brushes, and your panels. But what else? Water, snacks, sunscreen. There are so many things that you could probably apply or use before you head out. You know, just planning ahead, I think, is the crucial part. Knowing how long you plan to be out there, where you plan to go, what the weather's going to be like, all the basic things that you would plan for if you were just hiking. But it's really important to plan ahead. So that is my advice for that. One thing I like to do is put everything in my pack. Hi. This is Bella, everyone. Go on, get. One thing I like to do is put everything in my pack the night before or the day before, make sure everything fits really well, and then I'll remove a couple of things that I know I don't actually need. And so that's kind of my strategy for keeping things light. What happens if you forget a panel carrier or some way to transport your wet paintings? Well, that is a tricky one, and that's happened to me before too. So the great thing about the fly on the wall, I'll show you here, is that the panel can stay in here. These tighten really well, and the panel attaches to these screws up here. And so if you don't have a place to put your wet panel, you can always hike back down the mountain with your painting still in the easel and just hang on to it. It's very easy to hang on to. Another option would be to just carry the painting in your hand and just carefully make your way down, but there's always that risk that you're going to drop it, you're going to stumble, and it's going to fall and land butter side down. I can't guarantee that won't happen, so try to remember to bring some mechanism for transporting your wet paintings. But like I said, I've made all those mistakes before. I know that it's possible to keep going, to just be resilient, and to have fun no matter what. So I hope you found this video helpful, and get out there, get into the great outdoors, enjoy that vitamin D, and make some great paintings.